Open with a relatable story. Describe how someone notices their belly growing even though they haven't changed their diet much. Connect it to stress, late nights, constant deadlines, arguments, financial worries. Then ask the rhetorical question, why does stress seem to go straight to your waistline? Build suspense by saying it's not just calories, carbs, or lack of exercise, it's a hidden hormone switch most people don't know about. Tease that this talk will uncover that hidden reason and how to fix it naturally. Imagine a normal day. You wake up already a little behind, rushing to get the kids ready or to beat the morning traffic. And before you even finish your first cup of coffee, your phone is buzzing with deadlines. That's stress. But here's the twist. It doesn't just sit in your mind. The moment your brain senses a threat, whether it's a bill you can't pay or a boss you can't please, it sends a signal down to your adrenal glands. Those tiny glands sitting right above your kidneys release cortisol, the so-called stress hormone. And once that's in your bloodstream, the body changes course. Suddenly, your heart rate goes up, your muscles are primed, and most importantly, your metabolism flips into a storage mode. Your body is acting like you're about to run from danger, even though the only thing chasing you is your email inbox. Here's where it gets interesting. Cortisol is not inherently bad. It actually saved our ancestors' lives. If you were running from a tiger 10,000 years ago, cortisol made sure your body had the quick energy to sprint or fight. It was your survival hormone. But in modern life, you're not sprinting away. You're sitting at a desk, or you're stuck in traffic, or you're replaying an argument in your head. The threat isn't physical, but the hormone doesn't know that. It still tells your body to store fuel for later, and the favorite storage site is right around your belly. You might wonder, why the belly? Why not the arms or the legs? The reason is biological efficiency. Fat stored deep in the abdomen, what doctors call visceral fats, is easy for the body to access when energy is needed in a hurry. It's like putting gas cans right next to the engine. So every time stress lingers, your body is quietly tucking more fat into that central location, preparing you for a battle that never comes. And unlike the fat under your skin on your hips or thighs, belly fat is hormonally active. It doesn't just sit there. It talks back to the rest of your body, releasing inflammatory signals that make you hungrier, more insulin resistant, and more tired. Think about two people gaining weight. One is under constant stress, the other isn't. They both add a few pounds, but the stressed person's weight shows up mainly in the waistline. The non-stressed person may see it spread more evenly across their body. That difference matters because belly fat doesn't just change how your clothes fit, it changes your health trajectory. More belly fat means higher risk of diabetes, heart disease, and even memory problems later in life. So while two people may weigh the same, the one carrying it in the belly is at much greater risk, simply because of cortisol's fingerprint. The irony is that this process is invisible. You don't feel cortisol being released. You don't feel the fat quietly shifting to your belly. All you notice is that the waistband feels tighter, or that you can't button a shirt that fit just last year, even though you haven't eaten more than before. That's the hidden cost of chronic stress. Your body is still trying to save your life, but in doing so, it's creating a silent health hazard. Picture two neighbors living side by side. Both of them gain a little weight over the years, but how their bodies handle it couldn't be more different. One tends to store fat just under the skin, in the thighs, hips, maybe the arms. That kind of fat might change appearance, but it's relatively quiet. It doesn't shout at the rest of the body. The other neighbor stores fat mainly in the belly, deeper inside, wrapping itself around the organs. This fat isn't quiet at all. It behaves more like an active organ, releasing chemical signals into the bloodstream that stir up inflammation, raise blood sugar, and keep hunger hormones turned on. So even though both neighbors might weigh the same, the one carrying more belly fat is at a much higher risk of feeling hungrier, more tired, and eventually more sick. That's the trick cortisol plays. When stress hormones rise, the body prefers to use the belly as its favorite storage unit. It's a simple matter of survival biology. Visceral fat, the kind that builds up in the abdomen, is easier for the body to mobilize quickly when it needs fast energy. Imagine it as a strategic warehouse built close to the action. Back in the days when stress meant running from predators or fighting for survival, storing energy right in the center of the body was useful. But today, with stress coming from screens, traffic, and bills, the warehouse is always filling, never emptying. And here's where it gets worse. Belly fat doesn't just sit and wait. It sends messages. It releases inflammatory molecules that circulate like little alarms, making the whole system more irritable. Those molecules tell the pancreas to keep pumping out insulin. And high insulin is like a key that locks fat inside the cells, making it harder to burn. At the same time, belly fat turns up hunger hormones, so you find yourself craving more food even though you've already eaten. That's why people under stress often say, "I don't know why I'm hungry all the time." It isn't a failure of willpower, it's biology. The fat itself is asking for more. Think of belly fat as a bank vault. Every time stress hits, your body makes a deposit, tucking away extra energy in case of emergency. The problem is that this vault has no lock. It keeps calling for more deposits, filling up with calories you never really needed. And once it's full, it doesn't stay silent. It sends reminders like a bank manager insisting you keep adding to the account even when you're broke. The end result is you eat more, store more, and feel trapped in a cycle that seems impossible to escape. Now compare that again to the neighbor who carries weight under the skin. Their fat cells don't send the same urgent messages. They may not feel as hungry, their insulin levels may not be as high, and they can burn energy more freely. So that's why two people can eat the same meal and react completely differently. If one has more belly fat, their body interprets the meal as another opportunity to store, not to use. The belly is favored because cortisol makes it so. The hormone directs the energy flow into that vault, ensuring fuel is ready right where the organs are. It's the body's way of being efficient. But efficiency here comes at a cost. The more stress you face, the more cortisol rises, the more your belly becomes the storage site of choice. It's no accident that the waistline expands first when life feels out of control. This is why people say, "My weight goes straight to my stomach." It isn't just an observation. It's a biological fact tied to stress hormones. Your body thinks it's protecting you, but it's actually setting you up for a cascade of hunger, inflammation, and insulin resistance. And while the vault keeps getting bigger, your health balance gets smaller. Do you want me to now expand this into a full 900-word detailed narrative in Dr. Lustig style, or keep going prompt by prompt in shorter drafts like this so you can approve the flow first? It's late in the evening, the kind of day where everything seemed to pile up at once. Deadlines you couldn't meet, calls you didn't want to answer, maybe an argument at home. So you finally sit down on the couch, and even though you had dinner, your mind drifts toward the kitchen. Cookies sound good, maybe some chips, maybe that soda you've been saving. So you tell yourself it's just a little snack to take the edge off. What's really happening is that stress is pulling the strings. The cortisol released all day hasn't just told your body to store fat in your belly, it's also whispering to your brain that you deserve a reward. Cortisol and dopamine are close partners. Dopamine is the brain's feel-good chemical, the spark that makes you seek pleasure. Under stress, cortisol doesn't just make you anxious. It also amplifies dopamine's pull. That's why a cookie doesn't just look tasty, it looks irresistible. It's why the bag of chips doesn't just call your name, it shouts it. The biology is powerful enough to override logic. You know you're not hungry, but the craving feels real, almost urgent. The choice of foods is not random either. Stress rarely drives people toward broccoli or salmon. It pushes you toward sugar and refined carbs because they give the fastest hit. A soda or a handful of candy spikes your blood sugar, and with it, dopamine gets its rush. For a moment, you really do feel better. But that spike is followed by a crash as insulin rushes in to bring sugar levels down. Within an hour or two, you feel more tired, more irritable, maybe even hungrier than before. And if you happen to have more belly fat already, the crash feels even steeper because your body is less sensitive to insulin. This is the loop that keeps stress alive. Stress raises cortisol. Cortisol drives cravings. Sugar provides temporary relief. And then the crash creates more stress. The belly fat that builds from those repeated choices isn't silent either. Visceral fat releases its own chemical messengers that keep insulin high and hunger hormones switched on. It's like adding fuel to a fire you're trying to put out. You eat because you're stressed, you get stressed because you ate, and each cycle adds another layer to your waistline. Think about how often this happens in everyday life. Someone has a tough day at work. They come home and open a bag of chips. A student under exam pressure stays up late with energy drinks and cookies. A parent exhausted from juggling kids and bills grabs chocolate at midnight. In each case, the person doesn't think, "I'm stressed, I need sugar." They just act on the craving, not realizing it's biology, not weakness. The stress hormone has already flipped the switch. Over time, the loop deepens. The more belly fat accumulates, the more those inflammatory signals travel through the bloodstream. They don't just affect hunger, they also affect mood, making stress feel heavier than it really is. What might have been a small annoyance now feels overwhelming, and the craving for comfort food grows stronger. The body is caught in a self-reinforcing cycle. More stress leads to more sugar. More sugar leads to more belly fat, and more belly fat leads to more stress. It explains why many people feel trapped, blaming themselves for lacking willpower when in fact their hormones are in charge. Cortisol is steering the wheel, dopamine is pressing the gas, and belly fat is fueling the trip. What feels like a personal failing is actually the body following a script written for survival thousands of years ago. A script that doesn't fit modern life. Most people think the answer to belly fat is grinding harder, cutting calories, or punishing themselves in the gym. But if stress is the real driver, then the solution isn't about willpower, it's about calming the hormones that keep flipping the switch to storage. The body isn't working against you because you're weak, it's working the way it was designed, to survive. What you need is not more discipline, but a reset. Think of someone who's been under constant stress at work. Every night, they collapse into bed past midnight, sleep lightly, and wake up exhausted. Their cortisol stays high because their body never gets the full rest it needs. When that person finally prioritizes sleep, turning off screens earlier, keeping a consistent bedtime, the change can be subtle but powerful. Even 1 extra hour of real rest lowers cortisol enough that the body stops signaling the belly to hoard fat. Nothing else changes, but the waistband feels different within weeks. Deep breathing works the same way. A few slow breaths calm the nervous system, lowering cortisol in minutes. It doesn't sound like much, but when repeated day after day, those small drops add up. A person who takes 10 minutes to walk outside in the morning or steps away from their desk to breathe deeply in the afternoon is training their body to step out of storage mode. The brain interprets those signals as safety, not threat, and the hormones follow. Food plays its role too. When cortisol and insulin are high, sugar and refined carbs only make the roller coaster worse. But shifting to real food, protein that steadies blood sugar, fiber that slows digestion, healthy fats that satisfy, calms the storm. Imagine eating eggs and vegetables instead of grabbing a muffin. The body responds by keeping insulin lower, cortisol steadier, and cravings quieter. Instead of storing everything in the belly, the metabolism starts using it as fuel. It's not about eating less, it's about eating differently. There's a story I've seen over and over again. A stressed person thinks they need to run 5 miles a day to shrink their belly, but their workouts only leave them more tired, more hungry, and more frustrated. When they finally switch to a slower, more calming approach, walking in nature, light strength training, yoga, their cortisol drops and the belly fat starts to budge. Their metabolism shifts out of emergency mode into something more sustainable. They're not burning fat because they tried harder, but because they quieted the signal that was keeping it locked away. The truth is, when stress hormones run the show, the body is locked in storage mode. Calories get saved, fat gets tucked into the belly, cravings are amplified. But when you turn down that signal, through sleep, breathing, movement, and real food, the system flips. Suddenly, fuel isn't locked up, it's available to burn. That shift doesn't require willpower, it requires biology working in your favor again. Imagine someone who drags themselves out of bed every morning, already behind before the day begins. They stay up too late scrolling on their phone, fueled by coffee at night to keep working, and wonder why their body never feels rested. What they don't see is that every one of those small habits is keeping cortisol high, keeping their body in storage mode. Now imagine the same person making a few small changes, switching to water or herbal tea after mid-afternoon, dimming the lights and shutting down screens an hour before bed. It's keeping the same sleep schedule even on weekends. Suddenly they wake up rested instead of foggy, and because their stress hormones are lower, their cravings aren't screaming for sugar. The belly fat that once clung stubbornly begins to ease, not because they dieted harder, but because they signaled safety to their body. Daily habits act like a thermostat for cortisol. Push it higher with late nights, caffeine, and overstimulation, and the belly stores more fat. Turn it down with rest, rhythm, and calm routines, and the storage signal shuts off. Something as simple as stepping outside for a walk after dinner lowers cortisol while helping the body use up glucose. The stress cycle is interrupted without any effort to count calories or resist cravings. Exercise plays its role, but not the way most people think. Intense workouts may burn calories, but they also spike cortisol, especially if layered on top of a stressful day. A calmer, more consistent approach, walking, cycling, yoga, light strength training, brings the body into balance instead of throwing it further out. Picture two people at the gym, one pushing through punishing intervals, leaving exhausted and ravenous. The other walking steadily on the treadmill, finishing calm and refreshed. The first drives cortisol up, the second lowers it. Over weeks, it's the second person who sees their belly shrink because their hormones have shifted from storage to burn. The same principle shows up in daily routines. Someone who keeps a consistent sleep rhythm wakes with lower cortisol and steadier blood sugar, while someone who stays up past midnight one night and tries to catch up the next is caught in a hormonal roller coaster. A person who builds a routine of winding down, lowering lights, then avoiding screens signals to the brain that it's safe to rest. That signal is stronger than any willpower when it comes to shrinking stress-driven belly fat. Stories of change are rarely about someone discovering a miracle diet. They're about people who made quiet shifts in how they live. The busy parent who traded energy drinks for water after lunch and started walking with their kids every evening. The office worker who replaced late-night TV with reading under dim light and found they no longer needed a midnight snack. The retiree who switched high-intensity workouts for daily strolls and strength exercises and finally watched their waistline move after years of frustration. These changes don't sound dramatic, but the results are. When cortisol drops, the body stops demanding extra fuel, and the belly stops hoarding fat. The real fix has been hiding in plain sight. It isn't crash diets, grueling workouts, or superhuman willpower. It's in the simple rhythms of daily life, sleeping better, moving gently, managing light and caffeine, and giving the body signals of safety. Each of these steps is small diets, but together they send a powerful message: you're not under threat, you don't need to store, it's safe to let go. And when the body finally hears that, the belly responds in ways that diets alone never could. Stress will never disappear from life. There will always be bills, deadlines, disagreements, and unexpected turns. But what has become clear is that while stress itself may be unavoidable, the way our bodies respond to it can be reshaped. Belly fat is not an automatic sentence of modern living. It is the result of a system that has been switched on for too long. The good news is that when people shift their focus from cutting calories to calming stress, the results look and feel entirely different. I've seen countless examples where someone tried every diet under the sun with no success, but the moment they started sleeping better, walking more, and finding ways to decompress, the belly began to shrink almost on its own. Their appetite leveled out, their cravings softened, and suddenly eating well felt easier rather than like a constant battle. They weren't burning out on restriction, they were giving their bodies permission to let go. It's important to understand that none of this means your body is broken. Quite the opposite. Your body is doing exactly what it was designed to do thousands of years ago. Store energy in times of threat to keep you alive. The difference is that your threats today aren't predators or famines. They're emails and commutes. Once the stress signal is calmed, your waistline follows because your body finally understands the emergency is over. And here's the deeper motivation. Belly fat isn't just about how your clothes fit or how you look in the mirror. It's about what's happening inside. Visceral fat is tied to diabetes, heart disease, memory problems, and low energy. When you reduce it, you're not just trimming inches, you're protecting your future, giving yourself more years of vitality and fewer years of struggle. You're reclaiming the ability to feel light on your feet, to focus clearly, to wake with energy instead of dragging through the day. So the real power lies in realizing that this is not about punishment, and it's not about deprivation. It's about creating a state where your body feels safe again, where cortisol isn't running the show, where you're no longer stuck in storage mode. Each small habit that lowers stress, better sleep, steady routines, calmer movements, whole food, becomes a signal of safety. And the body, when it receives those signals, responds by letting go of the very belly fat that felt immovable before. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to chase youth. You don't need to fight yourself. You only need to understand how your body works and then work with it. Stress will always be part of the picture, but it doesn't have to own your waistline, your health, or your life. When you reclaim calm, you reclaim energy. And when you reclaim energy, the waistline follows.